Namo Buddhaya. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Mindful Samadhi. And this evening we're fortunate enough to have a lovely night, so I thought I'd do it outside. And it's also, the main reason is we're quite busy this evening. We have an event over the weekend. It's kind of end of year for the Dharma school. We have a Dharma school here where we teach children obviously Dharma, and it's the end of the year, so they're having a break-up session and we're giving away prizes, some of the academic students, and gives them good motivation and enthusiasm as well. So we have the Dharma hall getting set up for that, so there's some people in there. So I couldn't do my Q&A session in there like I normally do. And there's also a Dharma sermon happening with the Venerable Dharma Vijayatero. He's doing a Dharma sermon in where the monks reside. So I thought, why not a better place and do it outdoors? It's not too windy, so hopefully it doesn't affect my little wireless microphone. So yes, let's resume from where we left off last week with our Q&A session. So I have another 3 questions here that I printed out. So we'll jump onto those straight away. So first question is, hello Bhante Samadhi. I have a question about meditation. I have only just started learning to meditate. I have been walking and sitting most days. However, I miss Wednesday and Thursdays because my children have sports practice. My question to you is, only just recently when I go do my sitting meditation, I find myself getting restless very early on into my practice. I find myself getting restless very early on into my practice. I usually try and meditate for 30 minutes each time, 10 minutes walking, followed by 20 minutes sitting. But lately, when I go to do my sitting, I start to get fidgety and want to stop after just 5 minutes. It almost feels like my meditation is getting more difficult and not easier. Can you please give me some suggestions? Thanks in advance. Okay, so it's good that you've started to do meditation and you're starting to follow the path that the Buddha's laid out for us. That's very good. You're new to practice. That's perfectly fine, and you miss Wednesday, Thursdays due to your children having sporting events or sports practice. That's perfectly understandable. So getting restless when we start doing meditation is quite common. Okay, restlessness in Buddhism, when you're a practitioner, we generally have 5, we call them the 5 hindrances, and these things arise quite often in our practice, not only just for beginner meditations but also for intermediate and even at times advanced practitioners. So the 5 hindrances, basically, we have sensual desire, which is number 1, which is a very powerful hindrance that can happen in people's practice. Number 2, we have one called ill will. This can be aversion, this is also a very strong hindrance that people can have as well. We also have a thing called sloth, we have restlessness, and we have doubt. So you're number 4 in the category under restlessness. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. What I'd suggest though, looking at your email here, if you're only doing 10 minutes of walking meditation, if you're allowing yourself 30 minutes for your practice each day, excluding Wednesdays and Thursdays, then what I recommend is doing 15 minutes of walking and then 15 minutes of sitting meditation, okay? So in order to minimize or potentially eradicate restlessness in our practice, we want to utilize walking meditation, okay? So it could very well be that if you're doing 20 minutes of sitting and you're only doing 10 minutes of walking, this can bring rise to restlessness in your practice, especially when you're beginning, okay? So it's good to sort of even out and balance your practice with walking and sitting, and try and do the same amount of time, okay? Try and do 15 minutes of walking, 15 minutes of sitting, or if it's 30 minutes of walking, 30 minutes of sitting. try that and see how that goes for you. That could very well help out. So generally the advice I'd give to people if they're starting to feel restlessness and fidgety in their practice is to get up and start doing walking meditation. You can still utilize mindfulness just as much as you can sitting as you can walking, okay? So when you do your walking meditation, just walk at a normal pace like you normally would when you're walking, and just be mindful of the steps you're taking, ideally kind of from the hip region down, and just focus on the lower half of your body, and just observe the feeling of the steps when you're stepping on the ground. The texture. It could be carpet, it could be a hard surface, it could have some elemental effect, like it could have some coolness or warmness effect if you're perhaps walking on tiles or concrete. It might have a warmness effect maybe if you're walking on some nice felt carpet or some kind of silky carpet or something. So just observe the textures and try and just do a constant 15 minutes, or you're doing 30 minutes practice session, so do 15 minutes of walking, and then when you go to do your sitting meditation, I think you might find that might remedy the situation when it comes to restlessness, okay? See how that goes for you. If to no avail, then flick me another email or another message on Facebook and we can go from there. But alternatively, try that first. If you have things like sloth and torpor, or sleepiness or drowsiness, then it's recommended to kind of just slightly open your eyes a bit, or again, go to do walking meditation. That will sort of wake us up. Now in your case, you have restlessness, you're feeling quite fidgety. Try and tire yourself out a little bit by doing some walking, or even if you're not doing the walking meditation, try and go for a brisk walk or something before you start doing your practice, and you find that might resolve the issue with restlessness. Also things like caffeine. I'm not sure if you're a coffee drinker or a tea drinker. Caffeine can also play a role in restlessness as well. So just be a bit mindful if you're taking caffeine or any caffeine substance, and just try and maybe withdraw yourself from taking that maybe 2 or 3 hours before you start your practice as well, okay? So hopefully that answers your question. You didn't leave a name, but that's perfectly fine. So the second question we have is, hi Bhante, and greetings from Darwin, Northern Territory. Nice. I have been practicing Buddhism for the past 10 years, and I found your channel on YouTube, and it is now added to my playlist. Fantastic. That's good to hear. Thank you. Please keep the videos coming. I have a question regarding something horrible that happened to me the other evening while driving back from work. I was driving around 100 kilometers an hour when suddenly a kangaroo jumped in front of my car and I hit it with my bull bar. I stopped and went back to check, but the kangaroo had died and there was blood and guts everywhere. I felt terrible as I have been trying my best to follow the 5 precepts. I went home crying and I told my husband, who didn't seem to really care at all. I still feel really bad about this situation and what happened, and I think I'm a terrible person. Is there any advice you can give as a monk to help me understand how I should deal with this? Many thanks, Bhante. Carmel. All right, Carmel. Listen, I actually have a bit of a story to tell you for this one. I myself, when I was a layperson, I was driving home after a long day's work, and it was evening time. I think it was about 9:30 at night, and I was actually driving on the highway myself. I had a Land Cruiser at the time, so I had a full drive, so it was quite high off the ground. And I was driving about, I think it was about 100 kilometers as well. I had my lights on, I was on a highway. Now, I was in the right lane, and in the middle was a concrete sort of, medium kind of thing that separated the other side of the road. Now, there was little sort of areas, like maybe drainage holes or something that was going through these concrete things, but unbeknownst to me anyway, I was driving home, and to the left of me there was a vehicle, and I was overtaking that vehicle. Now, what happened was, it was either a possum or a rabbit. It ran out. It's obviously gone from underneath the concrete section, and it's gone through the little drain hole thing, and it's decided to go across the road. Now, it's literally run across the road as I was driving, and I had zero time to react. Now, to the left of me there was a car, because I was overtaking this car, and to the right of me was a concrete barrier, so I had no alternative options. Now, obviously what happened is, I'm not sure if it was a possum or a rabbit, I couldn't tell you, but I felt the bump as I drove, and I've run straight over this poor animal. Now, I was practicing also Buddhism and the 5 precepts at a very deep level. I was trying my best to adhere to 8 precepts at the time. This was a lead up to me becoming a novice monk, and when I ran over it, I just started, like, tears started running down my face, and I felt a lot of remorse, and I felt terrible, just like yourself. And I drove home, and I was just on the way home, I was sort of just thinking to myself, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Please, rest your soul. And I was saying all these things, and I felt really, really terrible. Very, very, very terrible inside. Now, I drove home, and fortunately for me at the time, I was living with a very senior monk. And fortunately enough, when I got home, he was in the kitchen. Now, I got home an absolute mess. I was crying, and I wasn't in a good shape. And the monk, Bhante, he said to me, he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, Bhante," I said, "a terrible thing just happened. When I was driving home, I ran over either a possum or a rabbit. I had no choice." And I explained the situation that I just explained. And what Bhante said to me is basically, my intention wasn't to run over any animals. I was just on my drive home. Now, that animal decided to run out in front of my vehicle, and I had no reaction or response time because I was trapped in between a concrete barrier and a car. So there was no reaction. There was nothing I could have done about the situation. But what happened, happened. Now, the first precept we have as Buddhist people is panatipata veramani sikapparam samadhiyami, which means to abstain for killing living beings or living creatures or living beings, however you want to word it. To put it basically is, don't kill anything. Now, I instantly felt like I broke that precept, but as the monk explained to me, my intention wasn't to kill the animal. I had no intention to do that, and that is actually correct. It didn't solve the situation. I was still very distraught, and I was very sad about it. But after he mentioned that, he sort of just said to me, in the Noble Eightfold Path, we have a thing called right intention. Okay, now under that category, basically, like, it's under the first 2, and it's like the wisdom category, right? So we have right view and we have right intention. Now, under that category of right intention, we need to understand, it says under there, non-violence and harmlessness. Now, obviously my intention wasn't to harm anything that evening, and my intention was not to have any violence or show any violence towards any animal or being. I just obviously wanted to go home. Now, it sounds like, Carmel, a very similar story that you've gone through, and you've hit a kangaroo. Now, your intention is the main object here, because sometimes karma works in a very unusual way, and this might not be a cause of karma. We're not sure, we can't be certain about this, but that particular animal made that decision, and in your case, Carmel, kangaroos, they get drawn to light as well. So if it's the evening, like you mentioned here, and you're driving 100 kilometers an hour, you could have potentially had your high beams on. But even if you didn't, if it was on dusk, or if it was, the sun's coming down, as most of us Australian people know, kangaroos, if you're in that kind of area, or in that, country environment, or if you're in open fields, kangaroos, they will sort of, if anything, they'll jump into the light. So sometimes this is an unavoidable situation. Now, luckily you weren't harmed in the situation, but unfortunately the kangaroo was harmed, and obviously it died, passed away. But we need to kind of look at this in the sense where, when you're driving as a layperson, it's actually unavoidable to not kill things, okay? Now, you're not aware of it, but prior to the kangaroo, when we're driving vehicles, especially in the evening, there's lots and lots of insects, and they get hit by the vent in the front of the car. Every night, every day, people drive in the evening. This is a very normal thing that happens. Now, these drivers, us included at the time, we don't have the intention to kill these flies and insects and moths and things that might perhaps fly out in front of our car, because they're attracted to the light, and this is just the nature of what's happening. So when we kill insects and little things like this, we just need to understand that our intention was not to harm anything, and not to show any violence and any form of harm to these little animals. Now, unfortunately, in this case, you killed a large animal. You killed a kangaroo, and in my case, I killed a possum or a rabbit. Now, we just need to look at this in the sense where, the first precept is do not kill any living things, but we also need to understand the Noble Eightfold Path. And the first two faculties of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view and right intention. And under right intention, it does state non-violence and harmlessness. So don't worry too much about it, Carmel. What's happened has happened. Your husband's response, as you said, is not caring very much. This is not in your control. Something you can't control. You can only control yourself and your situation and what's happening in here. So that's the main thing, okay? So don't worry about it too much. When we're driving vehicles, we have to understand and realize that sometimes things, especially insects and little creatures and little things, they're going to die sometimes. And unfortunately, this is the nature of the universe and reality, and these little bugs and insects are prone to being attracted to light and rays. So it's unfortunate, but in my particular case, ordaining as a Sri Lankan monk, we're actually not allowed to drive vehicles, and it's for that reason, because we're trying to practice at a deep level and follow our precepts. As a lay person, you have 5 precepts. It's your job to try and adhere to those as best you can, but we all have to drive from A to B, and majority of us have to drive vehicles of some sort. So you just have to understand, as long as your intention isn't to kill the animals, then that is the main thing, okay? Because even as monks, when we're walking, we have to be very mindful. There's ants on the ground, there's little geckos and all sorts of things. So sometimes these things are unavoidable, okay, Carmel? So don't beat yourself up over it too much. What's happened has happened. That is the past, and we can only try as best as we can as noble people and followers of the Buddha and his teachings, and try and just be in the present moment, okay? So, lucky last question. One of your videos you mentioned contemplation of the body as a potential meditation object. Can you explain how I can go about incorporating this into my practice? Also, I'm really enjoying these Q&A sessions. Please keep them coming, Dylan. Okay. No problem, Dylan. So, looking at your question here, I'm assuming that you've been doing meditation for a while and you're wanting to have a look at contemplating the body. So we call this is the first of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. We call this one Kayanupassana. Kayanupassana is contemplation of the body, and that is your question. So In reference to that, we have a really good sutta. It's a meditation sutta. It's called the Satipatthana Sutta. Now, in the Satipatthana Sutta, we have 6 different contemplations that you could use potentially to contemplate the body. Okay, so the first one is Anapanasati. Now, Anapanasati refers to you, people that are unaware, is contemplation of the breath or mindfulness of breathing. Okay, so Anapana is the breathing, and mindfulness is the sati. So Anapanasati is mindfulness of breathing or mindfulness of the breath. You can contemplate that. That is a contemplation of the body that you can use. We have the second one is contemplation of the 4 postures. So we can also contemplate our practice, whether we are walking, doing walking meditation, whether we're doing sitting meditation, whether we're doing standing meditation. We could be standing and contemplating an object or something in our near vision, or even perhaps in the distance. So standing, and also lying down, contemplation of lying down. So you can be looking at this and these 4 different postures, and you can contemplate those. So contemplating how you're lying down, how you're breathing, how is it feeling on the body, things like this. Same with the sitting, you can contemplate the sitting, the posture. Same with the walking, contemplate on your walking. Like I mentioned previously, the texture, how it's feeling on the feet, the hips, the legs, the knees, the various muscles that we're using in this practice. So contemplation of the body is another one. The 4 postures. The third one is sati sampajanya. So that is mindfulness with clear comprehension. So we can use this when we're doing present moment things, and we can have clear comprehension of that. So whatever it is, we could be doing some bodily movement or some bodily function. Perhaps we might be going to the toilet, doing urinating, or going to the toilet, defecating or something, and we can contemplate doing that. We can contemplate chewing and swallowing our food. This is examples of sati sampajanya. So this basically just means, obviously sati is mindfulness, and sampajanya is with clear comprehension. Okay, so let's say, for example, you're chewing some food. Observe the whole process. So the process of you grabbing the food with your fork or your spoon or your hands or however you eat, and then contemplate bringing that to the mouth. Contemplate you putting it in the mouth, you closing your mouth, contemplating the saliva utilized to help break down the food, the chewing, and then contemplating the digestion of it, the swallowing of it, going down the throat. Contemplate how the body, puts it into the, down the throat it goes, and into the body, into the stomach, and just contemplate all of these things. This is sati sampajanya, so we can do that. The other one is contemplation of repulsiveness. So what I mean by that is basically we have 32 different elements, we have 32 different body parts that we can contemplate, right? So this is probably the best example I could give you for Kayanupassana if you're wanting to practice contemplation of the body with your practice, okay? So when you're doing sitting meditation, choose an object. So 32 parts, I'm not going to go through them all, but you have the liver, you have the spleen, you have the spine, you have the blood, you have sinew, you have bones, cartilages, you have the skin, you have, I think you get hair, nails, pus, saliva, hair, hair going from the ears. We have all different areas, there's 32 of them, that we can contemplate. We have bile, we have phlegm, we have snot, we have the liquid from the eyes. So you can choose an object, and then that can be your object of your meditation. And that's Kayanapasana. So that's contemplation of the 32 parts of the body, or repulsiveness of the body, we could call it. So that's another one that you could do. For more sort of intermediate advanced meditators, you also have contemplation on the 4 elements. So you have the earth element, which generally, you can look at something like hardness. So it could be hardness like the bones in the body. That's an earth element. It could be the hardness of the surface that you're sitting on. That could also be another one. We have water, which we usually use as cohesion. And then we have the fire element, which we refer to temperature. Could be hot, cooling effects in the body. Those sensations, you can contemplate on that as well. And then the last one, so what have I got? Earth, water, fire. The 4th one is the wind element. So the air element or the wind element. You can also contemplate that, which refers to motion. So when you're doing in and out breath with your Anapanasati, the motion of the air element, the wind element, is going up and down. And this is the motion element of the wind or the air element. So you can also contemplate that as well. And then lastly, number 6, you have this one again. It's probably more intermediate advanced, but this isn't to say that you can't practice this. It's more contemplation of like dead bodies or cemetery grounds or charnel grounds, as Buddha used to call it back in his day. Now, back in the day of the Buddha, charnel grounds, not really like we class as a cemetery nowadays. Now in our days we have fancy coffins, and we have nice little concrete or wooden plaques that we can write about the person and give some, brief description of the person, when they were born, when they died, some honorary kind of note about the person as well, how they've lived their lives. But back in the Buddhist time, they were called charnel grounds. Now, charnel grounds, in some regions of the world, so India, Thailand, and these kind of places, especially in monastic kind of environments where there was monks and practitioners, you would find bodies would just be piled up on top of each other. It sounds horrific, but that's the way it was back then. And so, monks would be walking, and they could contemplate the body. Every day they would be walking past a dead body, and it could be, dead for 2 or 3 days, and every day you walk past it, you start smelling, a very strong odor, not a very pleasant odor coming from the body. You can start contemplating maggots and flies starting to take over the body. If you're there late at night, you can observe wolves and jackals and crows and ravens and vultures, or whatever it may be, coyotes, depending on where you are. These can also start taking a toll and start decapitating the body and eating the body away. You can find the air element will take over, and it will start bloating. The body will start filling up with gases and start bloating, and then discoloring and going purple, and many not so pleasant things. But monks and monastics back in those days could actually contemplate these at a deep level. And this is contemplation of like death, essentially, and how it's inevitable for all of us. But I think in your question, Dylan, probably my best advice would just be contemplating the 32 parts of the body. You can have a look online if you just Google Kayanapasana, or if you maybe go to the First Foundation of Mindfulness, please explain in AI or something like this, and this will come up, and it will give you a good description on how you can actually look at this. And it probably lists the 32 parts, the components that you can actually have a look at. So there's hair, nails, teeth, many things. Just choose one of those objects, and then however long you meditate for, just contemplate that and just have a look and investigate. Like say if you're contemplating hair, notice how our hair grows out of our skin, and hair tends to have an odor to it as well, especially when we start warming up the body, and heat becomes an element. We start perspiring and sweating, and then that sweat then goes onto the hair, and then the hair starts to smell, so it has some odorous to it. It's got like a wiry texture. It grows quite rapidly, and then as we age it starts discoloring and going grey, and there's many things you can contemplate just on the hair, and also many other different aspects of the body as well. So there it is. Hopefully that helps you, Dylan, and also Carmel. Hopefully I've done my best to answer those questions for you guys. Hopefully that's been of some assistance. So yeah, that's all for this evening. Hopefully my mic wasn't, the wind wasn't too noisy and blowing through the microphone, but we'll soon find out. But yes, thank you everyone for tuning in. Greatly appreciate all you guys subscribing to my channel, liking my videos and stuff. It's been fantastic. I actually wasn't expecting this many people, but yeah, I'm very, very grateful, and please keep bringing in those questions. There's links in the description when I do Q&A sessions on how you can contact me via email, Facebook. I'm on X, Instagram. I usually just use these social platforms for means of just posting this kind of content. I don't really hang out and go on these channels very much. I just post my stuff. It's just the way the world works these days, but I do check them to make sure that you guys have brought any questions in for me. So please, I encourage you to do so, especially if they're meditation based. That's really helpful. Okay, so have a good evening everyone. Te rawan so nai, and enjoy your weekend.